most challenging issues facing Portland today is our homeless crisis. Homelessness is a complex issue with many causes requiring multiple solutions. I want to talk to you about the intersection between homelessness, behavioral health, and substance use disorder. First, some context. How big is the problem? According to the 2022 official point-in-time count, thousands of people are living unsheltered on our streets, and unsheltered homelessness in Portland increased by 50% from 2019 to 2022. Far too many in our city are living in dangerous and squalid conditions. This is nothing short of a humanitarian catastrophe for our unsheltered neighbors, and it also creates public health, safety, and livability concerns for the entire community. Let me be clear, there's nothing humane about the situation on Portland streets. And that's why 94% of Portlanders identify homelessness as their top issue. Our collective goal should be to eliminate unsanctioned, unsheltered camping in Portland. To do that, we need a workable and compassionate means to connect people to whatever services they need to get off and stay off the streets. This could be shelter, housing, treatment, workforce training, and other services. Currently, there are hundreds of unsanctioned camps spread out across virtually every neighborhood of our city, over a massive 146 square mile area. This makes it impossible to hire enough outreach workers to meaningfully connect people to services, including shelter. And due to the current dispersed nature of the homeless population, there's no way to provide the kind of consistent case management or follow-up required to successfully connect people to the services they need. According to the Oregonian, 95% of the people experiencing homelessness they surveyed indicated that they'd never been approached by an outreach worker or offered any services of any kind. The status quo is not a compassionate response. Leaving vulnerable Portlanders to live outside in the elements in dangerous conditions poses issues to both the individual experiencing homelessness as well as the community at large. The lack of critical services at the state, county, and local levels is why we've struggled to help people get off the streets. Now it's up to us to act, to turn things around, and that's what I'm doing in my capacity as mayor. Continued innovation is the only way we will make progress on the intersection between homelessness, substance use, and behavioral health issues. Here is part of what we're doing. You've likely heard about the 5 resolutions recently brought to and approved by the City Council. I want to explain to you the goal of these resolutions because they serve as a roadmap for the revitalization of Portland. To put it simply, our homeless plan consists of 3 building blocks. The 3 building blocks are first, a significant investment in affordable housing. Second, moving the unsheltered homeless closer to safety and services. And third, the creation of a criminal justice referral system for a bold new direction to Portland. This is what Portlanders want, and no city, certainly not Portland, can wait any longer.
So we just heard from the mayor of the city of Portland, Oregon, Ted Wheeler, as he outlined the 2023 plan to combat the homeless crisis taking place in that city at this time. I live near the city of Portland and work for the city of Portland, and so this was a topic that I chose because I felt like this social problem was the problem of my generation. So to have an issue equal a social problem, there are the 3 criteria, which is it has to affect a large number of people in society. It has to be severe enough to have consequences that are substantial, and it has to require a group of people to work together to resolve. When it comes to criteria number 1, homelessness has impacts on everyone in a community, not just the people who are actually experiencing being unhoused. camps that exist in urban areas can create disease and spread disease. Another thing that camps are known for is the drug paraphernalia, like needles, pipes, things of that nature. I know that in the past, I've heard of other employees for the city that have been called upon to help clean up homeless camps and have suffered fentanyl exposure. I've personally suffered a fentanyl exposure accidentally on the job in severe weather response. So this was a situation where I was cleaning out a vehicle that was used to transport unhoused people from the streets to a severe weather shelter. After the sheltering operations had concluded, we had to clean the vehicles that were used and make sure that everything was out of them so we could return them back to the place in which that they originated, get them back to the bureau that was using them. I was throwing garbage away, and some of that garbage contained fentanyl, and I suffered an overdose on the job and needed the use of Narcan to bring me back. So that's just a personal example of something that I encountered, that many people encounter in dealing with being near or around camps of unhoused people, or sometimes when they move camp, they leave a lot of things behind, and in a lot of those things is dangerous and unhealthy and unsanitary things. Criteria number 2, it had to be severe enough to have consequences that are substantial. Obviously, those what I just described are pretty substantial consequences, but the homelessness crisis is growing at a rate that is currently out of control and not sustainable. It's so bad that states and cities are now declaring states of emergencies to address the issue. One of those states is here for me, the state of Oregon. The new governor, on her second day in office, she declared a statewide emergency, stating that the reason for that is homelessness. There's also multiple city declarations of emergency at the city level here in Portland, that shows, just how bad the problem really is. And you can see that with this level of response, obviously the problem is seen as very bad from all levels, not just the populace of the cities or the state. As you can see here on the state of Oregon's webpage, you can see the different states of emergency that have been issued or declared by the governor. This one right here, the second state of emergency that the governor enacted in 2023 was the state of emergency due to homelessness. So as we look into that declared emergency, we can see that this is actually an official declaration of emergency, much like what a governor would do in response to a hurricane or a large-scale natural disaster. So this definitely signifies that the largest parts of the government are starting to take notice of this issue and are taking drastic measures to combat it and to work to get this problem fixed. You can also see here, this is the City of Portland's website, and there's emergency declarations to address campsites and dangerous sites. So that's like located in high crash transportation corridors. People that are camping in tents don't have a lot of protection from vehicles. So if there's a high crash area and people are camping there, that increases the likelihood of people getting injured or killed as a result of camping and being struck by a vehicle or included as a pedestrian in a vehicle crash. And there's multiple city declarations that have to do with gun violence and everything. But the fact that some of these, like multiple of these emergencies have to deal with the unhoused population is just very telling as to how large this issue is and how the issue is continuing to get worse. And it's seen as something that is now being described as a state of emergency. The third criteria requires a group of people to work together to resolve the issue. This problem requires a lot of people. It involves people from just private citizens to local governments, state governments, federal agencies, nonprofit organizations, and then also requires a level of buy-in from the unhoused people themselves, which can many times be very hard to obtain, is to get their motivation to change their behavior and change what they're doing, to be able to change their situation. And so if somebody is stuck in a certain way or suffering some of the many different causes for homelessness, like mental health or substance use disorder, this can really hinder their decision-making capabilities and can really make their buy-in, which is essential to getting them off the streets, can make it really hard to obtain. And to try to fix a problem or start working towards a resolution, there has to be a clear definition of what the causes of that problem are. When it comes to homelessness, the causes are very many. One of the main causes is lack of affordable housing, and then obviously being in poverty, which is why someone wouldn't be able to provide financially for themselves and have to live outside of a typical housed environment. But then what are the reasons behind that and being in that? When you look at it from a national perspective, within the United States, homelessness did spike during COVID-19, and the fallout from that we are seeing now with these continued reports of increased homelessness in cities and states across the nation. We are seeing the impact that COVID-19 had on these cities and the problem of homelessness as a whole. And so you have to look at this problem holistically and say, okay, now that we know kind of why this is happening, now we have to figure out how do we undo the cause or that particular cause. And like I said, the causes can be many. COVID-19 is just one of many, many causes that has made this homeless problem worse and compounded upon it. And like I had mentioned before, looks like we ran out of free articles to view here. However, like I had mentioned before, the poverty has increased after COVID, and affordable housing is not easy to obtain within the United States. Rent prices continue to go up at a level that does not match with the level of cost of living increases at jobs and things like this. There is a huge gap between your more typical wages and also what is being charged for housing. If we cannot provide adequate housing for people at a cost that they can afford and is sustainable, then you're going to continue to see a rise in this homelessness, and the increase is going to continue, and we're not going to be able to stop this constant increase of people being unhoused across the nation. Another one of the root causes that we want to look at, in addition to affordable housing, is the addiction and the opiate crisis that is existing in our nation right now. With the amount of people addicted to narcotics, that really makes it difficult for someone to be able to achieve a level of earning that allows them to pay rent and other things. Their priority becomes their addiction, and their addiction does not allow them to work at a job or make money in a legal manner, which only exacerbates the problem of what they have, and it continues their cycle of poverty and homelessness. So we have to make sure that we look at that cause and say, if we're going to fix this problem, we need to be able to fix that cause and make sure that we're providing resources for people as a community to be able to get off of drugs or whatever their addiction is. Because if they're not able to stop that addiction, then they will never be able to rise above the situation that they're currently in and be able to join the rest of the housed population around them. As we transition from looking at this problem in a national perspective and more of a local perspective, and starting to bring it back down into Oregon specifically, it's important to look at what in Oregon particularly and uniquely affects this problem. One of the largest contributors to people being unhoused or in a position where they're not able to provide their own housing and are living in poverty, are unable to make the wages necessary to live in a normal housed environment, is mental health issues. And in Oregon specifically, there is very little help for mental health related issues. And so if we are not able to provide mental health help for people, then there's no way that we can expect them to achieve a level of stability in their life, which would elevate them out of living on the streets and into being able to self-sustain and live in a housed environment. So with the governor declaring states of emergency and the mayor of Portland declaring states of emergency to address the homeless crisis in Portland and Oregon, those emergencies carry with them funding for mental health treatment and things like that. So the funding is there. However, the long-term outside of the declared emergency funding needs to be established as well. And so that is something that the government needs to look at and say, once the declared emergency is considered over, how will funding be provided for these programs that are designed to get people off the street and keep them off the street? And that is one of the most important things that we need to understand as a society, that if we can call the emergency over, that stops the flow of money related to that emergency. And if there isn't a backup plan or a stabilization plan to maintain in the long term, then we're not going to solve the problem for good. We're just going to solve it temporarily and then slowly see it come back after we've removed all of the things that we've put in place under the emergency declaration. So it's very important for government to understand that and make sure that we're planning for the long term, not just the short term. Public policy in Portland is very weak, and makes a lot of the problems with homelessness worse. So Portland has a long history of being very soft on crime, especially crime that involves drug use and things of that nature, which we've already identified in this project as a root cause for homelessness. So that does not help in creating a environment where people don't want to be on drugs. It makes the problem much worse, and we are seeing the results of that. So a tougher stance on crime in the long term is going to be necessary for the city of Portland to turn around their unhoused problem and be able to assist the rest of the state, since most of the unhoused people in the state do reside within the city limits of Portland. As I conclude this project, I want to identify a couple of things, and that would be the closure of mental institutions in Oregon and the subsequent lack of mental health resources that still plague the state of Oregon is the most important event related to houselessness in Oregon, and offers a snapshot of the nationwide problem. If we do not take care of our most at-risk neighbors, then we're going to continue to see this problem get bigger and worse, and we're not going to have the livability that we desire in our state and our city. We have to look at houselessness for what it truly is. It is a very broad problem. There's not just one singular reason for homelessness. It is a problem as diverse as the homeless people themselves. Understanding and shedding light on this issue allows us to see the impact that this one event had on creating the issue that still exists today. And that one event is the removal and taking away from the funding of mental health care in the state of Oregon. After this project and after I graduate, I want to continue my work in emergency management and continue to work to help build a more resilient community within the city of Portland and the greater area, and making sure that I take care of everybody regardless of their situation or their status on where they live. All humans deserve to be protected, and all humans deserve to be taken care of by their public servants, and so I want to continue my work on that.